is not to be shown, and M. Smith is not to be shown. Yes, ma'am. Y'all don't have the list? It's Friday witness.
May I respond to that, Your Honor?
Yes.
How's this? I would just suggest that you may be looking at the list on your phone, and the highlights don't show up on the phone. If you check on your computer, you'll be able to see the highlights, I believe. Okay?
All right, thanks. Okay, are there other matters before we have the jury in this morning? Nope? Okay. All right, and is the jury ready? Okay. Are we going to have Agent Bernie, Special Agent Bernie? Okay. Do you want to go ahead and get him on the stand?
Yes, Your Honor. Is he going to need this to see anything?
And do you need those boards set up again?
Not at the beginning, Your Honor.
Okay.
One request, and if this is not able to, it's fine, but is it possible for the Mondo board to be used? He's going to be pointing and referencing a lot through Zoom. Mm-hmm. If that's not too cumbersome for the board, I think it will make it easier. And
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, yeah, we'll take a second to get that set up, and then after that's ready, we'll have the jury in.
Mr. Atkins, I'm sorry I missed that. Are you going to be using a board again this morning?
I'm not going to be using the boards when I'm starting this morning. I may use them at some point, but I don't intend to start with them at this time.
Okay.
Now, will we be able to see the Mondo, what's on the Mondo board through Zoom still, or will it go just to this?
Judge, it'll be the same thing that's on Zoom. The only thing that they won't be able to, that everybody won't be able to see necessarily is how he's pointing to it.
Okay.
But whatever's on this screen will be exactly the same as what's on
All right,
Zoom.
thank you. You can have a seat till the jury comes in. So we actually don't have all the jurors here. We're missing one juror, so it's, I don't know when it's going to be that we have them all. It's not quite 9 yet anyway.
Your Honor, may I run out to the restroom?
Sure. Good morning. Oh, we don't. Yeah, I don't know. Sergeant Ingram.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vaughn, would you use the mic?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I was just letting the court know that I believe Mr. Steele's motion that he filed on Friday morning would be moved as it relates to Mr. Sprinkle, because there's no intention during the continued direct examination of Mr. Sprinkle to ask any questions that would elicit a response as it relates to charging decisions and things of that nature, which I believe was the basis for his motion. So because of that, I believe the motion would be moved.
Okay, well,
Good morning, Your Honor.
good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Agent, Ms. Winfrey. Your Honor, Mr. Body told me that a little while ago, and yes, I believe that that would moot that
Right.
specific motion.
Okay, thank you.
Although I was interested in seeing everything that
I'm sure. Okay. And then we'll still expect response on the other two by whatever that deadline is that I gave y'all that I can't remember anymore. Friday. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, as soon as we have the final juror, we'll get started. All right. We've got the final juror. So let's go ahead and bring them out. All right, thank you. All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope y'all enjoyed your time off and are ready to get back to business. And we have got,
Not today.
we've got Special Agent Bernie was with us when we broke. And so Special Agent Bernie, I'll just remind you that you're still under oath. And Mr. Atkins, you can go ahead and pick up with your questioning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Agent Bernie.
Good morning.
Now, in addition to toll analysis, did you ever, or were you ever requested to perform any cell site tower analysis related to this case?
I was.
Were you, how did that come about?
I was asked by your office to review several phones, and they're called detail records, or they're records with tower information, as it related to several incidents.
Was one of those incidents the January 10th, 2015 murder of Donovan Thomas?
It was.
And after conducting your analysis, did you ever generate a report?
I did.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
I am handing the witness what has been marked as 532 Yankee. Agent Bernie, what is 532 Yankee?
This is a copy of my report.
And is it a fair and accurate depiction of the report you created for the January 10th, 2015 incident?
It is.
Your Honor, at this time, the state tenders into evidence 532 Yankee.
All right, that's admitted.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I don't mind it being admitted to help the agent testify, but I will have a continuing witness objection. It was made for purposes of this trial.
All right, understood. Is this just for demonstrative purposes?
Your Honor, could we address that at a later time?
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Agent Bernie, taking a step back, how in general do cell phones work in relation to towers?
Yeah, so when a phone's on, it's scanning the environment, looking for the strongest clear signal, the best signal for the phone to use. And then when you're ready to place a call, the phone chooses the tower with the best signal. So when I leave here today and call my wife, tell her I'm on my way home, hit the green button to place the call. The phone uses the tower with the best signal. Normally the closest tower, but not always, depending upon a couple factors. But normally the closest tower. My phone call then will go for however long it is, and then when that call is ended, that call then shows up in my call detail records, the records for my phone, right? It'll show the date and time of that phone call, that I called my wife, we talked for 60 seconds, and that the phone chose this tower and this sector as the best signal to initiate the call. And then, as I continue to use the phone, more records are populated showing the towers and sectors used for those calls.
Your Honor, the state is going to be publishing page 3 of 532 Yankee.
All right.
Now, Agent Birdie, can you describe how cell tower sectors work in relation to cell phone calls?
Yeah, so this slide here, page here, shows the most common types of cell phone towers. So the ones on the left-hand side, the monopole, the lattice work, structural, the guy wire tower, those are the most common ones we see as we drive down the interstates or drive through downtown Atlanta. One thing to note on the structural towers, those white vertical substances there are the antennas themselves. So they can put antennas on the sides of buildings or water towers to make those towers or sectors as well. One thing to note is everything on the right-hand side is also a cell phone tower. Obviously we don't have a fake cactus here in Atlanta. This is from a park in Phoenix, Arizona. But it just shows that not all cell phone towers are created equal. Some are smaller, like this fake cactus here, services a park or a region around a park. And some are really tall, like the lattice work or monopole tower.
And Agent Bernie, in terms of analyzing call detail records, is there any significance to these different towers that you just went through for the jury?
Yeah, so depending upon the type of the tower and the tower density, meaning where lots of towers are, depends on kind of the range of the tower, right? Where more people live and more people work, there's going to be more towers. As we get into the rural parts of our state, there's going to be less towers. So, a small tower like this fake cactus here, obviously is going to service a small area versus a really tall monopole or lattice work tower that could be 150, 200 feet tall is going to have a much larger area for coverage.
Agent Bernie, how are cell towers put in and how are those locations chosen?
Yeah, so it really depends on, again, where people live and where people work. They want to be able to provide coverage to all the areas. So that way, when we want to use our phone, we can. Obviously, if we have AT&T and we don't have service in a certain area, we probably won't have AT&T for very long, right? We'll switch to another provider. So if you think about the way they put cell phone towers in, it's kind of like a sprinkler system for a yard, right? We want everywhere in our yard to get water. We don't want one sprinkler head to shoot, this far, another one to shoot this far, and there'll be a gap between those two sprinkler heads, where it gets no water. Because in Georgia, obviously, the grass would die if it got too hot. What they want to do is you want to overlap one sprinkler head into the other sprinkler head's coverage area so that there's overlap. But we don't want to overlap too much and flood our whole yard with water. We want enough overlap so everywhere gets water. There's no dead space. That's exactly how cell phone towers are put in. One tower overlaps another tower, or sector side of the tower would overlap another sector. That way we can take our devices and we can travel everywhere. There's supposed to be no dead spots to where there's no cell phone reception.
And Agent Bernie, what is the range of cell towers?
Yeah, so again, the range is a common question, but it really depends on the density of towers, right? So what we're going to see is where towers are closer together, the range is going to be smaller than where towers are farther and farther apart. There's more area to cover.
Agent Bernie, are cell towers supposed to provide coverage to specific areas?
I mean, they are. So again, certain towers, if there's a brand new apartment building or a hotel, they may put a new tower in to cover that area, or they may change the orientation of the sides of a tower in order to provide coverage to the city.
Publishing page 4. Agent Bernie, can you describe for the jury what cell tower sectors are?
Yeah, so again, when a provider wants to provide coverage in an area, they put in a cell phone tower, right? A single tower, and that provides coverage in a 360 degrees. Well, in order to get more customers to use that tower, they take that one tower, which covers a full circle, 360 degrees, and they divide that into 3 equal parts. That makes each side or sector approximately 120 degrees. And that allows basically 3 times the amount of users that a single pole, if it was just one antenna, would be able to do. So what we see here is on the left-hand side, the triangle shape in the middle, that's the cell phone tower. And this would be us sitting above the cell phone tower looking down. So in this sector, in this illustration, again, we see sector number 1 or side number 1. The middle of it points towards 0 degrees. And again, since we know each side or sector is approximately 120 degrees, again, 360 divided by 3 gives us that 120. We know if the middle is at 0 degrees, that sector services 60 degrees to the left and 60 degrees to the right of 0. So that gives us the general left and right boundaries of a cell phone sector. One thing to also note is that each tower and sector is uniquely numbered, meaning if we're looking for T-Mobile tower 1, 2, 3, in T-Mobile's tower list, there's only one tower labeled 1, 2, 3 in their entire network. And then it tells us the orientation or the direction in which each side or sector points. So it's like a fingerprint in the network. It allows us to know exactly the tower and the side of the tower that was used by each phone.
And Agent Bernie, for all of the cell phone providers that you analyzed for this case, do they all indicate which sector a tower was used for a specific call?
So it depends upon the records. Most of them do. Some Sprint devices, based on how they recorded information. So each cell phone provider keeps their records slightly different. And when they change from 3G to 4G to 5G, they oftentimes change the way they keep their records. So there are some records for Sprint that would only show a tower information. It won't show a side. But we'll talk more about that when it shows up in the analysis.
Publishing page 5. So, Agent Bernie, how can you describe for the jury, using this illustration, the orientation of sectors?
Yeah, so again, in this instance, if we look on the left-hand side, this is how we're going to take the information from the call detail records and the tower list and put it on a map so that we can see a general area where a device was when it had an activity. So again, on the left-hand side, the triangle shape is the tower. This is us above the tower looking straight down. And we see, in this case, again, it used side number 1 or sector number 1. And what we've done now is we put a red line on the left-hand side of the boundary and a red line at the right-hand side of the approximate boundary of the sector. And then we've kind of shaded the area in the middle to say, hey, we're looking between these two lines there. That shaded area, that doesn't mean that's what the coverage of the tower is, nor does it say, hey, the phone is located inside that shaded area. Again, it's just showing that's the side or sector of the tower. On the right-hand side is what you'll see how it's going to be shown on a map. Again, we have the red line on the left, the red line on the right to show the approximate left and right boundaries. You see where the points of the V kind of meet at the middle. It's hard to see, but there's a green dot. That's the cell phone tower right there.
And Agent Bernie, do cell phone provider companies ever share towers with one another?
So they can share towers, but they never share antennas. So think of phones as children, right? We teach children don't talk to strangers. Well, that's exactly what happens in cell phone networks, right? T-Mobile only talks to T-Mobile phones. Verizon only talks to Verizon phones. So again, a phone company could share a tower. There could be one tower in a spot that everyone really likes, and there could be T-Mobile antennas at the top. Next tier could be Verizon, and the next tier down could be AT&T.
There's a slight lag on this Zoom, Agent Bernie, but can you describe, with the towers we discussed, how would towers in, say, downtown Atlanta with this sector and orientation compare to towers in a more rural part of Georgia?
Yeah, again, where more people live and more people work, there's going to be more towers. So those towers, again, more towers kind of limits the range of each of those towers. Because again, we don't want to overpower towers by other towers. But that being said, not all cell phone towers are created equal. We saw in the picture, there's really tall lattice work towers, right? And then there's smaller fake cactuses, right? Where they can put antennas. They do here in Atlanta. They put antennas on the sides of street corners. And that just covers like a certain block. Maybe there's a popular place for people to hang out or businesses or whatever, so that can cover a small area. So on some of the maps, you're going to see a lot of dots closer together. They're all cell phone towers, but it doesn't mean that all of those cell phone towers are 150 feet off the ground. Some of them could be smaller towers or antennas in certain areas.
Agent Bernie, how is it determined what tower a cell phone will use to make or receive a call?
Yeah, so again, when the phone's on the network, not being used, it's scanning the environment, looking for the best signal. And the phone then chooses that tower with the best signal to start the phone call.
Will the strongest signal always be the closest tower?
Not necessarily. Again, cell phone and RF energy is based a lot on what's called line of sight. So as long as the tower can see the phone and vice versa, the phone can see the tower, it's going to be good. Now, some towers are taller and their line of sight is farther than the ones that are closer to the ground. So again, the phone is going to choose the tower with the best signal, normally one of the closest towers, especially in a urban area like downtown Atlanta, may not be the closest.
And Agent Bernie, say you're traveling down the highway, how is it that your phone will decide or choose to change towers at some point?
Yeah, so again, the phones are always scanning the environment, looking for the best signal. And if you're in one spot here, your best signal could be this tower on the left-hand side. But as you move down the block, you're going to get closer to the tower on the right-hand side. The signal strength and other factors would determine that the phone would choose the tower as you get closer to it on the right-hand side. Now, when you're in a call, so say I place a call on my way out of here to talk to my wife, and as I'm driving, we stay on the phone for an hour. We have lots of things to talk about, I guess. But the phone is going to choose the initial tower and sector for the call here. That's going to go in the call detail records as the first tower used, because that's where the phone call was initiated at. But as I drive an hour towards my house in Auburn, Alabama, the phone's going to jump different towers based on the signal strength. And those choices are made by the network, meaning my phone says, hey, I'm leaving the tower that's close to the courthouse, now I'm getting closer to the other tower, and the network says, okay, switch to that tower. That will also, potentially, based on the provider, show up in the call detail records. Not all providers keep every single tower that your phone uses from here to Alabama. Some just keep the very first tower.
Agent Bernie, going back to coverage area, how are you able to estimate, generally speaking, the coverage area of a tower?
Yeah, so again, it's based on the other towers and sectors that are in the area. So obviously, in an area where there's not as many towers and sectors, we can see a general area. In downtown Atlanta, where there's lots of towers, again, not all towers are created equal. Some are really tall, some are really short. So that kind of general area gets a little bit harder to determine, an exact area based on that.
Is there a way to determine the actual coverage of a tower in present day?
There is.
Can you describe that for the jury?
Yeah, so we have some equipment that we use that was recommended by the phone companies, the same kind of equipment that they use to, find dead spots and other things. So we put this equipment on a vehicle, and then we drive around the area that we're trying to map the coverage area of the tower. It's called a drive test. And that equipment works kind of like a cell phone. It's saying, hey, at this spot where I'm sitting right now, tower number 1 is the strongest, clearest. And then when we go a little bit further, it says, hey, I can no longer have usable coverage from tower number 1. We've kind of reached the edge of its limit. So as you drive around, the system is collecting lots of data and actually mapping out what the footprint of a certain tower and sector is on the day that you map it.
And Agent Bernie, is there a time limit for when you are able to conduct a drive test in relation to a specific case?
Yeah, we obviously want to drive test the tower as soon as we can, close to the time of the incident. Because again, things change. We're obviously going through a transition from 4G to 5G, and new antennas could be placed, or antenna sectors could be changed, or changed directions of which they are. So we tend to say, a year or so, maybe as much as 18 months, depending upon whether there was a big technology change in that city that we're mapping out.
Agent Bernie, you had touched base some last week on cell phone records and the data they contain. Do you recall that?
I do.
Can you describe for the jury what is a routed call?
Yeah, so a routed call is specific to Sprint network. And a routed call would be a call that comes into your device and then gets routed to voicemail. So let's say there's a couple different ways it can happen. Let's say that your device is on and you just don't hear it ring. Right? And ring, 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 and then eventually it goes to voicemail. So what we can see in the records is it would show, hey, someone called Jay's phone. Jay's phone never answered. And then Jay's phone routed that person to voicemail. So then it showed up in the records as a routed call.
Are you able to map routed calls?
Each provider is a little bit different, but in the Sprint network, routed calls, we do not map their tower and sector activity because we don't know for sure that the device used that tower and that sector at that specific time.
Is there any cell phone providers that use the terminology abnormal calls?
Abnormal completion.
What does that mean?
So that is a term in T-Mobile's network that just means that that call got routed in a different way than a normal call would get routed. So an abnormal completion might be, instead of me using tower 1 and then it going to point number 2 and then to my destination, now I use tower number 1, but instead of point number 2, it routes a call to point number 3 and then a different destination. So depending upon whether those calls are incoming or outgoing as to whether the tower and sector information is valid in those.
Now, Agent Bernie, turning back to this case, what were you requested specifically to do in relation to January 10th, 2015 murder of Donovan Thomas?
Yeah, so I was asked to take a look at several phones. We'll show them here in the analysis in a minute. But several phones and their activity roughly around the time of the shooting. So sometimes those are starting in the early mornings, sometimes they're starting in the late afternoons. But basically, to analyze the cell phone's activities, the towers and sectors used, and kind of show them on.
Before receiving that request from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, did you have any information about this case?
No.
Do you personally know any information about the phone records or associated individuals with those records that you plotted?
I do not, no.
I'm going to publish slide 7. Or I'll take one step back, Agent Bernie, on slide 6. So can you explain for the jury, using this illustration, when you generate this report, what do all, how are the slides and the calls shown on your report?
Yeah, so for each cell phone tower that's shown on the map, there's going to be one of these boxes. We refer to them as a call-out box, basically. And it's information directly from the call detail records and the tower list provided by the provider. So again, the call detail records is kind of like that phone bill with the tower and sector information. And then the tower list is the information provided by the provider, where the towers are located, and how each sector is located. So what we see on here is, at the top, it says CID. That stands for cell ID. That's that unique tower number, not replicated anywhere else. So in this case, we're looking at a Verizon tower, 392. So again, that specific tower number, and then -3 shows the side of the sector, sector number 3. Underneath that is the date. We see that as January 10th of 2015. And then underneath that is going to be the phone number for the activity on this tower. So in this case, it's going to be the phone number ending in 6080. And then you have the time. That's going to be in local time. So all of it is going to be in Eastern time, local time to the event. It'll say the type of activity, was it an incoming or outgoing call? You see that there. The next number there where it says 270, that shows the side of the tower used and the compass heading of the middle of that side. Meaning, we know that it used sector number 3. We see that at the top in the CID box. Well, we can tell, based on the tower list, that sector number 3, the middle of it, points towards 270 degrees. That's where that 270 is. So then we know that if the middle's at 270, we go 60 degrees to the left to about 190. 210, and 60 degrees to the right. That gets us to about 330. That gives us that general left and right limits of that sector. The other phone number involved in the phone call will be listed there. In this case, it was a number ending in 2643. And then if there was an associated name given to me by law enforcement as to who was using the 2743, the other number associated, that name will be put in there. So in this case, it's Calvin Treadwell. So again, what we can see from the call-out box is we can say, hey, the phone number ending in 6080, the number we're looking at, had an incoming call on January 10th at 7:38 p.m. It used tower 392, sector 3. That sector points towards 270 degrees. We see it there, and it came from the tower list. And that incoming call was from a phone number ending in 2643 associated with Calvin Treadwell. So all the data that we would need to map all the activity is listed in that call out.
Publishing page 7. So, Agent Bernie, can you describe for the jury what were the numbers that you analyzed in relation to cell tower location?
Yeah, so again, this is a list of all the cell phone numbers and associated users that were provided to me by law enforcement for each of the devices. And then you can see the provider for each of those devices listed there as well.
Agent Bernie, I want to ask you before we continue too, can you describe for the jury what records the FBI CAS team was utilizing in 2015 to analyze historical cell sites?
Yeah, so in 2015, we were using mostly call detail records. Again, the CDRs, which is your old school phone bill. And again, that has the tower and the sector for each phone activity. So we can see where the tower was and which side of the tower that was used. There's also additional records that we use nowadays in 2024 to map phone activity. Those records are called timing advance records. Timing advance records are kept by the provider, and they're basically check-ins or network interactions between the phone and the tower, kind of syncing the phone up to the network. And those records, you can provide the tower, the sector or side of the tower, and the distance the phone is from the tower. In 2015, there was really only one provider that was providing that information to law enforcement, and that was Verizon. In some instances, Sprint was in 2015 again. The problem with the timing advance records are those records are kept by a very short time by the phone provider. So you can get a call detail records, again the towers and sectors, for a phone going back a year. 365 days is the shortest time period kept. But for your timing advance records, the shortest time period is 7 days. So Verizon only keeps timing advance records because there's just so much of it for 7 days before it purges it from its network. So in 2015, those were the types of records that were available.
When did the FBI CAS team start utilizing time in advance?
So I came into CAS in 2015. I got certified in 2016, and we were using timing advance in 2016. But again, it's kept for such a very short time period that a lot of law enforcement don't have time by the time they identify a phone number to get those records before the records are purged by the system.
Agent Bernie, I'm going to turn to page 9 of this report. And if you can, there is a old school pointer, wooden pointer behind you, if that will aid you. So, Agent Bernie, was one of the cell phones you were requested to analyze a phone number ending in 5991 associated with a Kenneth Copeland?
It was.
What was the time range that you were requested to analyze for that device associated with Kenneth Copeland?
As you can see, it's listed underneath here. So January 10th, roughly 6:30 a.m. in the morning, up until the next day, January 11th, a couple minutes past midnight.
Agent Bernie, looking at this slide, when it comes up on the screen, can you describe for the jury what these icons are that are red, yellow, and green?
Yes. Your Honor, may I stand?
Yes, you may.
So for each of these map slides, they're going to be oriented the same. So at the top of the slide, we'll see the phone activity. So again, this one lists January 10th, 2015, and it lists the time period. So this is between 6:37 and 7:26 p.m. So 6:37 a.m. to 7:26 p.m. That's what's shown on this slide here. Each slide will have a slightly different time period. The phone number for the activity listed is going to be in that top left-hand corner there. So again, this is a phone number ending in 5991 associated with Mr. Copeland there. The different locations of interest that I was given will also show up on the slide. So here we have the crime scene for this homicide location, again listed as 330 McDaniel Street in Southwest. We see that as a red box with the letter CS that's located there. We have a residence. It's going to be listed as a yellow box with the letters QR listed here. And then a green store with an address of 322 Glen Street Southwest. We see that as a green box with the letter the number 1 listed in there. One thing you also see on this slide is a lot of black dots. Those dots are cell phone towers operated by the network in this case. So in this case, this is a Sprint phone. So each of these black dots are Sprint cell phone towers as they existed in their network on January of 2015.
And Agent Bernie, on this specific slide, what is the time frame for the calls you plotted in relation to the device of Mr. Copeland's?
So again, we see that at the top, 6:37 a.m. on the 10th to 7:26 p.m. also on the 10th.
Now, Agent Bernie, can you show the jury where and at what time the first call is that's depicted on this slide?
So the first call here is at 6:37 p.m. It's an outgoing call. And you can see it's pointing towards this tower here. Again, we can tell which side or sector of the tower that was used, because this tower has a sector on the north side being used and also on the southwest side. We can tell which sector is used by this number located in here. Again, that's the compass heading, or number of degrees of the sector. So at 6:37 and 21 seconds a.m., which is the first call, it shows there was an outgoing call that used sector oriented toward 330. So again, the north side, 330 degrees up here. The next call, 6:38 and 47 seconds, an outgoing call. Now the phone is using this side of sector here, because we see it went from 330 to 220, which is this side or sector down.
And Agent Bernie, after that 6:38 a.m. call, when is the next call?
So the next call is in this call out box here at the bottom left. It's 1:31 and 41 seconds, and we see the tower and sector used here. Again, that would put the device in this general area here.
And after that 1:31 call, what is the first call and time after that?
So again, same tower, same sector. There's one at 6:20 p.m. down here. Again, using same tower, same sector, puts that device there. There's several 6:20 through about 7:01, all using this same tower, same sector.
And from that specific tower and sector from 1:31 p.m. to 7:01 p.m., how would you describe that device in relation to 178 Maury Avenue, the yellow QR on the screen?
So again, one thing you'll notice here, right, is there's a tower here, there's a tower here, and there's a tower here. We see the sectors are also populated in here. One thing to remember, again, think of that sprinkler head analogy, right? These are 3 sprinkler heads. There's going to be overlap area probably somewhere in the middle along it. So again, this tower and sector, again, would probably be in this general area, but it could be in an overlap area around here as well.
And Agent Bernie, after that 7:01 p.m. call, what is the next call and tower location?
So the next one here is at 7:24. We can see the tower and sector here. And then right after that is a 7:25. 09, it uses this side over here, and then there's a call at 7:24 and 7:26 and 45 seconds that's now using this side up here.
With that 7:24:09 call, where is that call in relation to 178 Maury Avenue.
Again, in the general vicinity.
And does this slide have a scale on this map?
It does. There should be a scale. It looks like it should be a little bit further down. There's a scale right underneath here.
And using that scale, how far approximately is 178 Maury Avenue to 330 McDaniel Street, the red crime scene icon?
So straight line distance between this and here is approximately 5 kilometers or about 3 miles. Again, straight line distance. A little bit over 3 miles.
Is there any data with the phone associated with Kenneth Copeland that places him in 330 McDaniel Street at 7:22 p.m.?
No. Again, we have 701 down in here, and then 724 in this general area here, 725 now this tower, 726 now this tower in sector here. So again, if the question was at 722, I would say the device was somewhere in this general area down here.
And if there's not a call received or made, are you able to plot the tower location for any phone?
Yeah, so again, for the call detail records in 2015, we're relying solely on activity placed, which are calls and some text messages depending upon the network.
And is there or what is the amount of time between the 7:01:58 p.m. incoming call and the 7:24:09 p.m. call?
Yeah, so those are about 23 minutes. Again, the 701 call uses this tower here, the 724 uses this tower here. Again, approximately 23 minutes between those two calls.
And Agent Burney, I wanted to ask you a question about some of the numbers that are being called on this slide. Do you see any calls to a 4090?
I do.
Can you, do you see any calls to a 7604?
Yes, there are. There's several right here. 7604, 7604, and then there's some over on this side as well.
How many of the calls are between the device associated with Mr. Copeland and the 4090 and 7604 on this slide?
Total combined?
Combined. Yes, sir.
Uh, 11.
And in total, how many total calls are there on this slide? If you were ever asked or requested to try to, or have you ever been asked or requested or conducted who a phone number calls in terms of who physically possesses said device?
I mean, I've been asked to put together basically a calling, analysis. So, hey, who's the most called number by this device? And then we look up that device and it's, this individual. And therefore, hey, if that's the most common called by the phone number in question, then, maybe it's someone important to that phone. So yes, we've done some basic toll analysis.
Agent Burney, I'm going to publish slide 11. Is this a continuation of the cell tower that we just saw for Mr. Copeland?
Yes, it is.
And on the previous slide, what was the last call time?
On the previous slide, 7:26 and 45 seconds was the last one. And then the next one on this one is 7:28.
Can you describe for the jury where that tower and sector is for this 7:28 phone call?
Yeah, we see it here. Again, it points towards this tower and this sector here. So again, the tower is located right along this I-20 on the south side. It provides coverage in this general area over here.
And where is the device associated with Mr. Copeland for that 728 call in relation to the green store at 322 Glen Street Southwest?
So again, you see the green store is going to be this green box right here. So that tower and sector is actually the closest tower and sector to the green store there, and it would most likely provide coverage to the green store at that point in time.
With that, with the slide we just discussed with the cell phone activity near Deshaun Quarterman's house, what is the travel from slide 10 to this current slide at the 728 call?
So again, the previous call was at 7:26, and that was using this tower here, but again, this side over here. So again, at 7:26, the device is somewhere in this general area, and then we can see at 7:28, so approximately 2 minutes later, the device is in this general area here.
And what is the last four of the phone call for that 728 call? And is it I'll ask you that first.
Yep, so it's 0102. We see that number listed there.
And is it an incoming or outcoming call?
It's an incoming call to the Copeland device.
Now, after that incoming call from 0102, where is the next call with the device associated with Mr. Copeland?
So we can see the next call is at 7:43 and 29 seconds. We can see the tower here that's used, and again, that sector would provide coverage in this general area here. So now we're looking at the south side of Atlanta.
And after that tower, CID 3152, where does it travel, or what is the next tower the phone utilizes?
Yeah, so then the device travels to this one down here at 7:49. You can see the tower and sector used here. And then there's, I think it's cut off on the Zoom part down here, but there's another tower and sector used at 7:51. That's south of that. So again, basically at 7:28, the device is in this general area, and then it starts to move southbound, ending up down here at 7:51.
And Agent Bernie, for that last tower you were discussing, could you, if you don't mind, use the screen behind you? Just because I do think it's a little bit cut off.
Yeah, so 751 is this tower and this sector here. So again, this is the 74904 is this same one that's listed right here. And now we can see just underneath that is this one at 751. So again, on the big screen, it would just be located, down here a little bit further.
Now, Agent Bernie, I'm going to publish page 42. Agent Bernie, can you describe for the jury, you see this says 678-2785-991 has one event?
It does, right here. You see this tower right here.
And is that the same call we were just discussing?
It was. You can see it as 75136.
And what is that orange M icon on this slide?
So that orange icon there is a location of a McDonald's at 150 Cleveland Avenue Southwest, Atlanta.
So when that 751 call was made, where was the device associated with Kenneth Copeland in relation to the McDonald's at 150 Cleveland Avenue?
So again, it's in this general area here. It's within the tower and sector that would provide coverage to the McDonald's.
Going back, Agent Bernie, to the slide we were just discussing, and while I'm pulling that up, how do the icons get populated on your report?
Yes, so locations are provided to me, either a street address or a latitude, longitude. Those go into our mapping software, and then we put them on the map. And we can basically show which icons on the maps we want to show and which ones we do not, based on the time. So that way, if we, in this case, obviously I was last asked to look at this incident, but several others. So there were dozens of icons. So if I kept them all on the map, it would get kind of confusing as to what's relevant and what's not. So we're able to toggle off ones that are not relevant during this time period.
So to be clear, Agent Bernie, that on this slide, page 11, that 751 call, although there's not an orange M icon, that is the call that's in the general area of the McDonald's?
Correct. Yeah, the McDonald's icon, if it was on there, would show up right here, basically near the intersection of these two roads right there.
So, Agent Bernie, what is the last four of the call that the device associated with Mr. Copeland makes at that 7:51 p.m. call?
The last four are 0102.
Now, I'm going to publish slide 12. What is the time frame for slide 12?
We can see it at the top, 8:22 p.m. to 10:41 p.m.
And Agent Bernie, when is the first call depicted on this slide after the 7:51 p.m. we just saw?
So we can see this says 8:22 p.m. We see the tower and the sector right here. So again, here's I-20, and this is 75, 85. So again, in this general area.
Agent Bernie, how much time, what is the amount of time between 7:51 call and this 8:22 p.m. call?
Approximately 30 minutes.
And does this map before us have a scale?
It does.
Roughly how far is the McDonald's at 150 Cleveland Avenue Southwest to the teal icon of 1080 West Peachtree indicated as Williams Condo?
Just give me 1 second. So straight line distance is about 8 or 9 kilometers from the M here to this WC here, which again stands for the Williams Condo. So approximately 9 kilometers, which maybe 4 miles and some change.
And is there any major highway between 150 Cleveland Avenue and 1080 West Peachtree Street Northwest that's depicted on this slide?
There is. You can see here is the 85 down here, 75, 85 kind of interstate.
Can you show the jury the tower and sector for this 8:22 p.m. call from the device associated with Mr. Copeland?
Again, it's using this device here. It's using this tower, I'm sorry, right here, in this general area.
And Agent Bernie, with the gap of time we just discussed, if the device was traveled from the McDonald's at 150 Cleveland Avenue to 1080 West Peachtree Street and then has that call at 8:22 p.m., how would you, what are your, how would you, is that possible?
Are you asking is it possible from the 751 to get from the McDonald's to here and then here at 8:22?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, I would say it's probably possible. I think 751, again, there's 30 minutes. This is approximately, what did I say, 4, almost 5 miles there. So, yeah, I think in that time period, you could potentially get from here to there to back into this general area here.
And how far approximately is that tower location at the 8:22 p.m. call to 1080 West Peachtree Street?
Maybe 4 kilometers, so under 2 miles, probably from here to, this general area here, under 2 miles. Again, estimate.
And Agent Bernie, do you see on this slide the numbers we had discussed earlier, 4090, that end in 4090 and/or 7604?
I do.
And how many times do those two numbers appear in the device associated with Copeland's phone in this time frame depicted on the screen?
7.
And Agent Bernie, do you see, or I'll ask you this, the call we were just discussing, the 8:22 p.m. call, what is the last 4 and who is that call associated with?
So again, we see that call right here, the 822. It's an outgoing call from the Copeland device to this phone number here, 404-662-8935.
And Agent Bernie, there's a lot of numbers. The page 7 of this report, can you reference page 7 that has and I'm going to ask you if that 8935 appears on that page?
It does.
Who is the device ending in 8935 associated with?
Mr. Sledge.
And Agent Bernie, do you see any other calls after that 8:22 p.m. call between the device associated with Mr. Copeland and the device associated with Mr. Sledge?
I do.
Can you tell the jury where those calls are depicted in the time?
Yeah, so we see those as 8:39 p.m. here, and then using this tower and specifically this side or sector here, and then at 9:02 there's another call, and now it's using this tower and sector over here.
And Agent Bernie, do you see any calls to 5726, a phone number ending in 5726?
I do.
And I'm going to ask you to utilize the phone numbers on page 7 to see if 5726 is a number associated with a person.
5726, yes it is.
Who is that associated with?
Mr. Zachary.
And Agent Bernie, of the towers on this slide, is there any that are in the general area of Deshaun Quarterman's residence?
Is that the
QR yellow
QR
icon.
is down here. So again, this tower and sector would provide coverage in this general area here, and we see calls using that at 9:23. And this tower and sector would provide coverage in this general area, probably not directly at the Quarterman residence, but in the general area here. Again, that's at 8:31.
Agent Bernie, what is the last call depicted on this slide? And can you show the jury where that tower and sector is located?
Yeah, so the last call is at 10:41, an incoming call here. You can see the tower and the sector. Again, puts the device now kind of north and west of Atlanta in this general area.
Agent Bernie, I am publishing slide 13. What is the time frame depicted on this slide?
So we can see at the top, this starts at January 10th at 11:06 p.m. and goes into the 11th at 12:07 a.m.
And Agent Bernie, can you walk the jury through with the towers depicted, the movement or travel of the device associated with Mr. Copeland in this window of time?
Yes, so the first activity is at 11:06. We see the tower in sector here. Again, that would put that kind of in the downtown Atlanta area. The next call in sector we have, or tower sector we have, is up here near the Williams condo location. That's at 11:14 and 11:17. Then we see the device now is moved again southbound, 11:24 p.m. We see the tower in sector that's used here. And then the last tower in sector we have is this tower here. It uses both the north side and the south side. Approximately 11:44 p.m. till the last call of 12:07, which you guys can see here. So again, in this general area here, 11:44 to 12:07 a.m.
And Agent Bernie, the tower at the top, CID 3102, is there two calls, the first being at 11:14 p.m.?
There is.
And where is given that tower location, where is that tower in relation to 1080 West Peachtree, labeled as Williams condo on this slide?
Yeah, so again, you can see the Williams condo with the address. It's square right here with the WC in it. Again, this is the closest tower and sector in that area.
And Agent Bernie, do you see any communication between the device associated with Copeland and the device associated with either Mr. Sledge or Mr. Zachary on this slide?
I do.
And how many times does, from this window of 11:06 p.m. to 12:07 a.m., does the device associated with Mr. Copeland have some communication with the device associated with Mr. Sledge or Mr. Zachary?
Approximately 7 times.
Agent Bernie, I am publishing page 14. Were you ever asked to analyze a 6080 associated with a demise McMullen?
I was.
What was the time frame you were requested to analyze for the phone associated with Mr. McMullen?
You can see it listed here, January 10th, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m.
Publishing slide 15. Now, Agent Bernie, do you recall when you were here last, we had the toll analysis board?
I do.
This call, what is the first call on slide 15 for the device associated with Mr. McMullen?
The first slide, or first call here is at 7:29. You can see that outgoing call placed there. Again, you can see the tower and sector that was used for that device.
And is that the first call we had discussed when we were referencing the boards?
It was.
Where, when that 729 call, was it incoming or outgoing?
It's an outgoing call.
And when the outgoing call from the device associated with Mr. McMullen, whose device associated did he call?
So as you can see here, it's an outgoing call to 3904, device associated with Mr. Williams.
And when that call was made, where was the device associated with Mr. McMullen in relation to 1080 West Peachtree Street associated with as Williams condo?
Yeah, so you can see the Williams condo there. Again, you can see the tower and sector there. It's in close proximity. Again, that tower and sector would be in the potential coverage area for that condo.
And is there two either calls or attempted calls after that 7:29 p.m. depicted on this slide?
There are.
Can you describe for the jury where they are and whose associated device was they were to?
Yep. So we see them here. 729 is the first one, and then there's 730 and 731 and 731, both two outgoing calls. One thing you'll notice These are Verizon records. We can tell based on the red boxes here, red is associated with Verizon in our system. One thing you'll notice is the seconds. All these show 00. The records sent by Verizon only had the hour and minute. So again, no seconds recorded in their records. So these calls weren't placed at the exact same second, but they were placed in the same minute, 7:31. My system just shows seconds on it. I just realized that in this time period in 2015, the Verizon seconds are all going to show 00. So we have, during the minute of 7:31, we have 2 attempted outgoing calls placed by this device associated with Mr. McMullen, and both of those go to device ending in 8008, Mr. Bradford, associated with Mr. Bradford.
And Agent Bernie, are those 3 calls that we just discussed, are they all the same tower and sector location?
They are.
Now, after that 7:31 call to the device associated with Mr. Bradford, where is the next tower?
So again, we have this one here at 7:31, tower and sector here, again, this general area. The next one here is at 7:38, and here's the general area of that device there. So it's moved from this spot southbound.
And that 738 call, is that outgoing or incoming?
Incoming call.
And is that call, that incoming call, associated with any person you were asked to analyze?
It is Mr. Treadwell.
After that 738 call from Mr. Treadwell, where does the device associated with Mr. McMullen go next?
Yeah, so 738, then it uses this tower down here, 739, and then eventually this tower down here at 750.
And Agent Bernie, who is the 739 call associated with?
739 call, again, which uses this tower and sector here, you can see is associated with also Mr. Treadwell.
And what is the last 4 of the number? Well, I'll get to that in a second. Where is the call? Where's the next tower and location after that call?
The next tower and sector is down here at 750.
And who is that call at 752?
It's an outgoing call, again, to the device associated to Mr. Treadwell.
And Agent Bernie, what is this blue, dark blue icon associated address, 35 Oak Drive Southwest? How is that depicted on this slide?
Yeah, so again, this was another address I was just asked to place on the slides, associated address. We can see it as a blue square with the number 2 in there.
And Agent Bernie, with the 750 outgoing call to the device associated with Mr. Treadwell, where is the phone associated with Mr. McMullen in relation to 35 Oak Drive Southwest, Atlanta, Georgia?
Yeah, so that 750 call here, again, we see the tower and the sector. The address, the associated address would be in the footprint of that tower in the sector.
And Agent Bernie, does this map have a scale?
It does. You can see it at the bottom down here.
How close approximately is the blue icon for 35 Oak Drive Southwest and the orange M for the McDonald's at 150 Cleveland Avenue Southwest?
So between these 2 points here, approximately a mile straight line distance.
Is there any gaps between the phone calls we just discussed, starting with 7:38 p.m. or 7:39 p.m. and 7:50?
No, there's no other activity during that time period.
And Agent Bernie, after that 7:50 outgoing call, at the bottom of the screen, where does the device associated with Mr. McMullen travel next?
So next is another call at 7:53. We see the the tower and sector used, again, going to be in this general area here.
And where does it travel next?
The next activity is at 7:59, and we see the tower and sector used here. Now it's, again, here's that I-20/85 interchange. It's north and east up in this area.
So in general, Agent Burney, from that call at 7:29 p.m. till the last call depicted on this slide at 7:59 p.m., what is the general direction of travel for the device associated with Mr. McMullen?
So the device has activity in this general area the last time at 7:31. We then see the device travel southbound, eventually using this tower and sector here in close proximity to this associated address number 2 at 7:50. And then shortly thereafter, we see the device start moving northbound again. And this slide ends at 7:59. We can see the tower and sector used there again, just north of that I-20/85 interchange.
And Agent Burney, the two numbers on this slide that end in 0102 that don't have a name associated with it, do you see those?
I do.
Is that or is that not the same phone number that the device we looked at of Mr. Copeland interacted with when at 7:51 p.m.?
It is the same phone number, yes.
Agent Burney, I'm going to publish slide 16. What is the first call on this slide?
So again, this is the review period between 8:01 and 8:30 p.m., still on the 10th. The first activity we have is at 8:21. You see it there. It's an outgoing call to the device associated with Mr. Treadwell. You see the tower and sector of that device used right there.
And for that 8:21 outgoing call to the device associated with Kevin Treadwell, where is the device associated with Mr. McMullen in relation to 1080 West Peachtree Street Northwest?
Again, you can see the towers and sectors used. I would say that tower and sector would provide coverage in this general area here that would also include the Williams complex.
So between the first call we looked at 7:29 p.m. to this 8:21 p.m. call, what is the general movement of the device associated with Mr. McMullen?
Yeah, so it departed, again, the area around the Williams condo, 731, went south near that associated address number 2 at 7:50 p.m., had an activity down there, and then moved back north, eventually arriving in the area around the Williams condo at 8:21, having activity in that area around 8:21.
Agent Burney, I am publishing slide 17. Were you ever asked to analyze a phone number ending in 3145 associated with a Justin Cobb?
I was.
What was the time frame you were asked to analyze that phone number?
Again, I looked at between 6:30 and 8:30 p.m. on the 10th.
Agent Burney, can you indicate for the jury and show them where the first call, the time and tower and sector for the first call from this phone?
Yeah, so again, looked at 6:30 to 8:30. Right? The thing to remember is, again, we can only see towers and sectors associated with activity. So this device during that time period only had 2 activities, the first of which is at 7:31 and 37 seconds. And we see that's an outgoing call. And we see the tower and sector used, again, would be one in close proximity to the Williams condo on West Peachtree Street.
And Agent Burney, I'm republishing slide 15. Where is the device associated with Justin Cobb at 7:31 p.m. in relation to the device associated with Mr. McMullen at 7:31 p.m.?
Yeah, so those devices, again, are in the same general area. Obviously, with call detail records, we can't say specifically where a device is, but we can say a general area based on the towers. And both of those devices, again, would be in the general area around the Williams condo at 7:31.
And Agent Burney, is the calls from the device associated with Mr. McMullen and the calls associated with the device of Justin Cobb, are they calling the same number or receiving calls from the same number?
They are.
And who is associated with that number?
That's a device associated with Mr. Bradford. You can see it right there.
Republishing slide 18. Agent Burney, how long a gap in time is there between the 7:31 p.m. outgoing call to the device associated with Mr. Bradford and the next call depicted on this slide?
Yeah, so the next call, it's hard to see on the Zoom down there, but it's down here. You can see it on the bottom of the slide at 8:29 p.m. So again, 7:31 to 8:29, just under an hour.
Publishing slide 19, were you ever asked to analyze the phone ending in 8935 associated with an Antonio Sledge?
I was.
And what was the time frame you were asked to analyze that phone?
Again, reviewed roughly the same time. This is 6:20 to 8:22 on the 10th.
Publishing slide 20, what is the time and location of this call depicted on slide 20?
So again, the only activity during this time period for this device associated with Mr. Sledge is at 6:20 p.m. on the 10th, and we can see the tower and sector. Again, that puts that device somewhere in this general area here.
And who is the outgoing call at 6:20? Is it to any other phone number that you were asked to analyze?
I was. It's associated to Mr. Zachary.
Publishing slide 21. Agent Burney, can you explain this single tower, but what's depicted there from 7:55 to 8:22 p.m.?
Yep. So again, activity of the same device ending in 8935 associated with Mr. Sledge, 7:55, 8:22 p.m. We can see the tower here, and it actually used two different sectors. One we see is associated with 30, and one says -1. The -1 there just shows that the tower list didn't specifically have the sector orientation. I had to go back and verify that with the provider themselves. So in this case, this is an AT&T device. So AT&T provided that the azimuth for what's listed here as -1 is actually 90 degrees here. So what we see is, again, tower and sector activity between 7:55 and 8:22 puts the device in this general area here, as it used, two sides of the same tower.
And Agent Burney, in this window from 7:55 to 8:22 p.m. depicted on slide 21, is there any communication between the device associated with Mr. Sledge and the device associated with Mr. Zachary?
There is.
Can you show the jury the time of those communications?
Yeah, so the Mr. Zachary associated device is the 5726 last four. So we see one at 7:55, and then we see one again at 7:56.
And
both outgoing calls.
Agent Burney, who is associated with the phone number ending in 5991?
That device is associated to Mr. Copeland.
And is there a call between the device of Mr. Sledge and the device of Mr. Copeland depicted on this slide?
There is 8:22 p.m. an incoming call to Mr. Sledge's device from Mr. Copeland's device.
Agent Burney, I'm publishing slide 22. Were you ever asked to analyze a phone number associated with Mr. Bradford ending in 8008?
I was.
What was the time frame you were asked to analyze that device?
Again, we have 6:36 p.m. to 8:27 p.m., both on the 10th.
Publishing slide 23. Agent Burney, can you walk the jury through the movement of the device associated with Mr. Bradford with the towers depicted from 6:36 p.m. to 7:19 p.m.?
Again, so again, this slide, January 10th, 6:36 to 7:19 p.m. Again, location of interest was the crime scene at 330 McDaniel Street. You see that as the red box there. The first call during this time period is this one down here. It's hard to see, but it says 6:36 p.m. We see the devices in this general area. 6:38, the device is now using this tower in the sector here, has moved northbound. And then at 6:52, we see the device now using this tower and sector here. Uses that at 6:52. 6:56, now we're using this tower and sector here. And then eventually it bounces back to this one here at 7:12, 7:14, and 7:19.
Now, Agent Burney, from that first call at 6:36 p.m. In what appears to be Peoplestown from the map, do you see that?
I do.
When does the device associated with Bradford or the travel from that Peoplestown tower till the last call at 7:19 p.m., how is that movement in relation to the crime scene at 330 McDaniel Street?
Yeah, so the initial call, 6:36, again down here in the south side of the slide, moves up to the I-20/85 interchange area, and then it moves westbound, first having an activity in this general area here at 6:52, and then again, it uses this tower, bounces to this tower, and bounces back to this tower again. Again, think of the sprinkler system, right? There's going to be some overlap between the two. We have this tower initially, then we bounce to this one, then we bounce back, which means that it's probably in some of the overlap between this tower and this tower here. And then eventually 7:19 is the last call mapped on this slide.
So, Agent Burney, to be clear, between 6:52 p.m. and 7:19 p.m. is the device associated with Mr. Bradford in the general area of 330 McDaniel Street?
Yes, again, I can't specifically say it, but I would say it's in the overlap between those two, and that overlap would be, again, in this general area here.
Publishing slide 24. When is the next call after the 7:19 p.m. call?
The next activity is at 7:24, and we can see the device has moved again from where it was up in the vicinity of the crime scene. Now it's moved south and east over here at 7:24.
And Agent Burney, do you remember when you testified first, we published two Yankee, which was a CAD report?
Yes.
How long after that 911 call was received is this call at 7:24 p.m. depicted at the top of this slide?
I think approximately 2 minutes.
And after that call, Agent Burney, where does the device associated with Bradford travel?
So it goes from this area here to, again, this area down here. It's hard to see. We'll jump to this screen here. But it's in the vicinity of that associated address number 2. It gets down there approximately 7:31 and has some activity in that area until 8:08.
And Your Honor, maybe take a brief
Sure, let's
comfort
take
break.
our morning break.
you look around the courtroom, all them boys seem to be dressed like they want to get out of
Trip over
there.
This court and my computer died.
Oh,
There's a
yeah.
delay, so
No problem.
thank you.
Are we in recess, Your Honor?
Yes, let's take 10 or 15 minutes.
Mic check, mic check. All right, my fault. As I was saying, though, this the most productive that they've been since court has started. Uh, like I couldn't even get a word in. And we had to have Miss Love. We probably would have had about 10 sidebars by now. Problems with the audio, several objections. Nevertheless, though, for God Squad, we got started a little late, so we ain't gonna take no recess with them. We gonna skip right on ahead and get right back on in there. But tell me what y'all think thus far for the day's testimony. Now, okay, we done proved that. Okay, we can prove that these phones that belong to these guys was moving around through Mechanicsville, right? And over what they say up in Zone 3. But what is that proving? That they was in the area during the time? It may look as though they had something to do with this, but you still have to prove, like, we need the weapon. We need some witnesses on the scene. So far, I ain't seen nobody come in here and point them out and said these boys did nothing. But we right back in the courtroom, y'all. We gonna keep it moving. Yeah, do it look like Jeffery Williams will be getting out anytime soon to you?
Hey, Laura, is it still like 6?
And if you've been watching so far, tell me, is it just me or is it a lot peaceful with Miss Love not in the building? They saying they get a lot more accomplished when she's not around. And with Glanville in there when he was in there, it's like them two combined. We was just watching for the paint to dry. getting back to their attire though, right? I don't think it's appropriate to come up in the courtroom with hoodies on and t-shirts with all this, all the writing that you be having on. And maybe it's just me, but like I said, talking about I'd been to cut my hair before we even came in here to see the judge. Talking about a total different appearance. At the judge sitting up there wondering, why have I attached thug to my name? I have me a pair of them non-prescription glasses on. But yeah, we can prove that them phones was out hitting it by the towers, okay, scientifically. But can we to get solved? Mic check, can you hear me out there? The main murder they seem to be trying to, crime they seem to be trying to get solved is the Donovan Thomas case. That seemed to be their strongest evidence, which is weak to me. Best thing they had when it come to that is Kenny Copeland's testimony. Which may come back and bite them. It all depends on how the jury gonna view this. I'm thinking at some point, man, they just gonna be ready to get this case over with. Deliberation probably gonna be about 15, 20 minutes. But the Judge Page got on Miss Love Friday, and she said something. Mic check. Mic check. Mic. There we go. But Miss Page tells Miss Love that it seems like y'all been building this case as as we go along. I'm trying to get this volume right, y'all. Excuse me. But I've been saying that the whole time. It seems like that's why Miss Love is steady trying to present some evidence that the defense don't know nothing about. Cause every time she thinks she found something, she just want to slide it on in, and I'm talking about it's been several times that they didn't warn her about this. And they just
Thank
recently
you, Your Honor.
said something
The state is
to her
republishing
about
slide
it again.
24. Agent Burney, picking up, where does the device associated with Mr. Bradford travel after that 7:24 p.m. call?
Yeah, it's 724. It moves from this general area here southbound and uses a tower and sector here. Again, on this screen we can see a little bit better. That's in a general area associated with associated address number 2 between 7:31 and 8:08 p.m.
Agent Burney, within that time frame of 7:31 p.m. to 8:08 p.m., starting at the top, do you see any phone calls with other numbers you analyzed?
I do.
Where are they at the top?
Yep, so the first one is that we see is this Justin Cobb, an incoming call to the Bradford device, 7:31 and 50 seconds. And then the next one down is a incoming call at 7:31 and 53 seconds to the McMullen device.
And Agent Burney, when at that 7:31 call, where is the devices associated with Mr. Cobb and the devices associated with Mr. McMullen on these two 7:31 p.m. calls at that time?
Well,
And
can you repeat that question again?
Yes. Do you see the location here for those 7:31 calls at 7:31 and 50 milliseconds and 7:31 and 53 milliseconds?
Seconds, yes, right here.
I am going to republish slide 15. Do you see on slide 15 that 7:31 p.m. call between the device associated with Mr. Bradford and the device associated with Mr. McMullen?
I do. The McMullen device, 7:31 p.m. Again, using a tower and sector in the general vicinity of the Williams condo.
And Agent Burney, I'm going to publish slide 18. Do you see that call at 7:31 p.m. between the device associated with Mr. Bradford and the device associated with Mr. Cobb?
I do.
And where is the device associated with Mr. Cobb at that point in time?
Again, using a tower and sector in the vicinity of the Williams condo.
Going back to slide 24. Agent Burney, do you see the call, or do you see that the device associated with Mr. Bradford has a call at 7:47 p.m.?
I do.
And is that in the general area of 35 Oak Drive, Southwest Atlanta, Georgia?
It is.
Agent Burney, I'm going to publish slide 15. Do you see a call on slide 15 at 7:50 p.m.?
I do.
And is this 3 minutes after the call that we just discussed with Mr. Bradford?
It is.
And where is the device associated with Mr. McMullen at 7:50 p.m.?
Again, using the tower and sector here in close proximity to the general area associated with associated address number 2.
So is the device associated with Mr. McMullen and the device associated with Mr. Bradford at 7:47 p.m. or 7:50 p.m., where are they in relation to one another?
They're in the same general area around associated address number 2.
Going back to slide 24. After that, or what is the only other tower depicted on slide 24 that is that we have not discussed?
Yeah, there's a tower here at 8:07 out here. That's used for an outgoing call.
Agent Burney, I'm publishing slide 25. Where is the movement of the device associated with Mr. Bradford between 8:17 and 8:27?
So again, this slide covers that time period, 8:17 to 8:27. We see the tower and sector used. Again, put that device in this general area here, 8:17 to 8:23. And then we have activity on this tower and sector over here to the west at 8:27.
Agent Burney, I am publishing slide 26. Were you ever asked to analyze a phone number ending in 3904 associated with Jeffrey Williams?
I was.
And what was the time frame that you were requested to analyze?
Yeah, so I looked at calls between 7:03 and 8:22 p.m. on the 10th.
Publishing slide 27. Now, Agent Burney, when is the first call on this slide?
First call is at 7:03. We see the tower and sector here used. And we can see this tower was used at 7:03 to 7:31.
And when is the next, or do you see a call at 7:03:39?
I do.
Is that call at 7:03:39 to any devices you were requested to analyze?
It is. It's to the 1990 device associated with Miss Dolly Greer.
And when is the next call after the 7:03:39 call?
7:29 and 30 seconds, an incoming call from the McMullen device. Sorry.
Now, how much of a gap in time is there between 7:03:39 p.m. and 7:29:30 p.m.?
Approximately 26 minutes.
And with the records with the call detail records you had for phone number 3904, were you able to plot any tower locations between that window of time?
No, again, we're dependent upon phone activity, and there were no activity that had towers and sectors during that time period.
Now, after that gap in time, who is the device associated with Jeffrey Williams communicating with, and at what time?
Between the 7:03 and 7:31?
Between 7:03 and 7:29, or at 7:29.
Yep, so you have the 7:03 call, again, with Dolly Greer, and then a 7:29 incoming call from the McMullen device.
And for all of these calls depicted on this slide, is the device associated with Williams, where is it in relation to 1080 West Peachtree Street?
Again, we can see the tower and sector that's used here. One thing to note is this is T-Mobile, right? All the green dots. There's a lot more green dots than in some of the other providers, right? So T-Mobile loves putting lots of smaller towers in there, and some of which are taller towers. I obviously didn't look up every tower in here, but I did look up the tower that was used here at 7:03 to 7:31. And this is a very large tower. It's about 156 feet, I think, in height. So again, that would, again, put that phone in this general area here.
And Agent Burney, where is the device associated with Mr. McMullen located at when this 7:29 p.m. call is made?
So it's also in the same general area here. Obviously, it's a different provider. The McMullen device is a Verizon, and we saw in the previous slide, I think it used like a tower located right here. There's a Verizon tower. that would have put the device, again, in the general area of the Williams condo. So these two devices are in the same general area.
And Agent Bernie, looking at your slide 7 with the phone numbers analyzed, who was the phone number ending in 9596 associated with?
Miss Dora Greer.
And so this last call on slide 27, is that the same number, 9596?
It is.
So although it has Jeffery Williams listed there, is the associations provided to you by the Fulton County District Attorney's Office for this case associate that number with Dora Greer?
It does. Yeah. So when I originally put in all the phone numbers and associated names provided to me by law enforcement, we went off of the subscriber's name, which was E. Williams. But then afterwards, it was identified that that number was being utilized by Ms. Dora Greer. However, my system just shows, again, that it's Williams, but know that the 9596 is actually associated to Ms. Dora Greer.
Agent Bernie, I am publishing slide 28. So after that 7:29 p.m. call we just discussed on the slide before, where does the device associated with Jeffery Williams travel?
Yeah, so the next activity is 7:33. We see it down here, but it kind of cuts off some of the bottom. So at 7:33, there's an outgoing call to the Treadwell device. Again, the device associated with Mr. Williams is in the general area of the associated address, number 2.
Now, Agent Bernie, going back to slide 27, do you see the 7:31 p.m. call we